So I was just wanting to begin sort of by asking kind of where the story came from and what it was that kind of made you put pen to paper and kind of decide that you wanted to step behind the camera for this.
So Terminal was kind of a distillation of three unhealthy obsessions I've always had. I love film noir. I love the evolution of noir. I love the way it's sort of branched out into these incredible, diverse subgenres. And, I love the characters and the tropes. There's so much to play with. It's an amazing toolbox to have at your disposal as a filmmaker. And I wanted to blend that with a sense of dystopia. I love dystopian literature. I love dystopian cinema. And to be able to sort of fish where those two rivers met was something really important to me. And I'd always had this idea that we could sort of interweave a sort of sense of like the dark fairy tale to it, of the kind of gothic hubris of like a dark fantasy, So that's kind of where the sort of graphic novel palette and elements, and also the Alice in Wonderland themes that punctuate the film, that's where they came from. So it was kind of a distillation of those three things that gave rise to Terminal.
And when I watched it, I kind of noticed it reminded me of kind of like Sin City and films like Blade Runner. I was sort of wondering kind of what films you look to for influence and kind of how you decided what style and how you kind of wanted to approach the material.
It's a really good question. I mean, Blade Runner, I love Blade Runner. I love Scott's Blade Runner. I think Villeneuve's Blade Runner is astonishing. And that was that world, that sort of that megalithic world, that sense of world as character has always, fascinated me. I think the world of Terminal definitely came first, and for me, in terms of conceiving the idea. And we looked at so many different films. Chris Ross, the cinematographer, astonishingly brilliant cinematographer. Richard Bullock, the production designer, who, what a job he did. Julian Day, costume designer. Sally J, the makeup designer. I mean, they just came with this incredible like cornucopia of ideas, and I sort of had a really strong idea in my mind of this kind of overall aesthetic. And we looked at things like Blade Runner, we looked at things like Sin City, Minority Report, we looked at a lot of that sort of sci-fi noir, but also we looked at much more eccentric versions of world building. We looked at Delicatessen, we looked at Sin City, we looked at sort of auteurs like Wong Kar-wai, what they do in terms of palette and canvas and the worlds that they make. And, but at the same time, we looked at things like Who Framed Roger Rabbit. We wanted to do something unique and eccentric and different. And we had the freedom within this anachronistic, timeless world to borrow from different genres, different periods, to utilize different inspirations and sort of blend them together. And, I think in a really long-winded way of answering your question, we looked at lots of different films, lots of different artists, lots of different palettes.
And I mean, you mentioned Chris Ross, the cinematographer, and I was really blown away by the kind of visual style of this film. I was wondering sort of kind of how you approached that and sort of the kind of collaboration that you had with Chris to kind of make sure that the film kind of looked the way it did, because it was absolutely gorgeous.
Oh, well, I will, yes. I mean, he did an amazing job. Well, I will tell him. So working with Chris, who is so collaborative, was an absolute pleasure. A lot of the things that we did, we wanted to imbue the film with a sense of sort of classic noir. So in terms of composition and framing, a lot of the shots have a sort of classic sense of framing to them. And Ian Mackay, our camera operator, as well as Chris, he would then sort of usurp that. He would then change that. He would find interesting angles, and so we had an A camera that was shooting kind of a very beautiful classic compositions, and a B camera that was picking up short sides and Dutches and all sorts of interesting things, so that we could combine those. We watched a lot of films. We swapped a lot of film stills. That's a great way of sort of building that rapport. I'd worked with Chris before as an AD. We were good buds before we started, which really helped. But I think the thing was he was so brave. He was so dynamic in the way that he lit it, and I really wanted to, because I knew how talented he was, and I wanted to hand him the freedom to do that, to go after that sort of that neon drenched Blade Runner feel, to create a sense of of noir, light and dark, and to in the way that Larry Smith did with Nicholas Winding Refn, and to sort of to create a neon lit noir, and then to also bring in an amazing sense of production design through Richard Bullock that would that we could, with limited time and limited money, create our own world, and they did an astonishing job.
Yeah, and of course Margot Robbie leads the cast, and she was excellent, but I know she was also involved her production company was involved and she produced the film. I was sort of wondering kind of how her involvement came about as a producer, and then what the sort of creative collaboration was like with her.
Oh, she's a nightmare. Absolute nightmare. She's very difficult, she's very rude. She's abrasive, crew don't like her. She is unbelievable. She is the most astonishingly brilliant producer. She's incredibly intelligent, she's incredibly well read, she is disciplined and dedicated in the way she gives notes. So to go back to the beginning of this, Tom Ackley and Josie McNamara, who are her producing partners, they are a lucky chap together. We were runners and assistant directors together. We came up through film, and we would always, we made tea and locked off together. We used to give each other jobs when, we were always working on the same teams. And I met Marg socially through them. And Tom, Josie and I had always talked about, I knew they wanted to produce, they knew I wanted to direct, we'd always talked about doing something. And I wrote Terminal in 2013, what I would consider the real sort of first draft in 2013. And I showed it to them in 2014, and Margs found it on her kitchen table, because she was, they were living in a flat share at the time together. And she read it with a cup of coffee and was like, this is fucking weird, I'm in, let's do it. Yeah. And we met 2 weeks later, we sat down to have a proper conversation about it, and it just grew from there. We honed and polished the script over about a year before we thought it was ready to take out to cast and to financing. And David Barron came on board, who was sort of an incredible producer, who did the Harry Potter films, Cinderella, Tarzan, amazing producer, amazing guy. And he mentored the project. He sort of elevated it and took it to market, and that was kind of the genesis of it.
So was it your idea to kind of get her involved as far as an actress, or was she kind of keen to jump into the role? She was
keen to jump in. I mean, it was it was unbelievable to what's the word I'm looking for, to find out someone like a world-class actress like Margs has responded to the material and wants to meet to talk about it. It's blows your mind, doesn't it?
And I mean, I love the kind of the ending, because it kind of, there's a lot of twists and turns, and I know you mentioned in an interview that you kind of considered it as part of possibly another film, and I was wondering if maybe you sort of had any ideas to return to this world and how you would sort of go about returning to this world, and where you, I guess, take the story.
Yeah, I mean, I'd love to. I love the world. I love the characters. I think as a narrative crucible, I think Terminal, the world of Terminal is a fascinating prism through which to tell stories. So yeah, I mean that's a great point actually. So one of the biggest and best things that Margs did was we were riffing about ways of ending the film, because we knew we wanted to build a series of rug pulls and reveals into it, so the audience could. I love that feeling as a viewer. I love films that pull the rug out under you and you just kind of think, what just happened? So we were talking about ways of ending it, and I pitched her what actually became the new Terminal ending, and kind of explained what I'd been playing with in a different script, and she was just looking at me like what's wrong with you? Why is that not in the script? That's great. And so then we put that in, and everything, in that way it does, everything kind of clicked into place. It felt like the absolute right ending to the film that we were writing.
Well, I mean, I love the ending and I love the film, and I think that's all we have time for, but thank you very much.
Oh, thank you so much.